So first here I'm going to discuss aperture. As I mentioned before, aperture refers to the size of the opening in the lens. And if you look at this image here, you can see in the first image, the opening is much larger. And then in the second image, it's closed down and it's much smaller. Now, this has been standardized. Well, the standardization is measured in f-stop. And I have a list here, as you can see. Each f-stop, there's a standard set of f-stop. And as you see here, one f-stop corresponds to a factor of 2 in light intensity. And just know also that f-stops are universal. So if you have a lens that is f2.8 and then you have a different lens, whether it's telephoto or wide angle or what have you, and that's also f2.8, they let in the same amount of light. So you can, or at least they should, I mean if they're rated correctly, but it should be the same amount of light that's coming through the lens. And that's super useful because then you can know what exposure you're shooting at in a given situation and change lenses, and then know if I just keep all the same settings, everything should be pretty much the same. Now, here's the list of the standard full stop f-stop numbers. And it goes 1, 1.4, 2, 2.8, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16, 22, and 32. And then there's more beyond it, but it's not typical in most lenses. The smaller the number, the larger the opening. So again, the smaller the number, the larger the opening. And how I sort of learned this in film school was that film is kind of the opposite. So the smaller the f-stop number, the larger the opening. And then later we'll find the faster you shoot in frame rate, the slower the image, the more slow motion that you'll get. So just kind of think of film as sort of opposite. And what that f-stop number controls is a couple of things. One, like I said earlier, it's the amount of light that's coming into the lens. So a lens that has an f-stop of 1.0 is considered to be a very fast lens, meaning it allows a lot of light to come in. And then if you have a lens that can only open up to 5.6, it is 5 stops slower than that lens that's a 1.0. And if we look at this formula here, it says 1 f-stop corresponds to a factor of 2 in light intensity. So that's a lot of light that you're losing out on. I don't know. When they say factor of 2, I'm going to just say it's 10 times less light. And if there's math geniuses out there that know that that's wrong, let me know and I'll correct it. But let's just say it's 10 times less light. That's a lot of light. It's a big difference, right? So to give you an idea, that 1.0 lens, there's only a handful of lenses in the world that actually are that fast. Some more common lenses that are considered fast are like 1.2 lenses, or more common even are 1.4 lenses and 1.8. The other thing then that the aperture controls is the depth of field. Depth of field is what area in the image is in focus. And if you look at this example on the screen here, here's your camera and there's 3 butterflies. And what this image is trying to illustrate is that the butterfly that's closest to the camera is out of focus, and the butterfly farthest away from the camera is also out of focus, and the one in the middle, just between these 2 lines, that area is in focus. So that's the depth of field. And You can make it deeper or you can make it shallower. And it's used for different effects. If you want to isolate focus and just have someone in focus and have the whole background out of focus, sometimes you want that. You want to just have only one subject as the focus. But other times, let's say maybe even like a landscape, you want everything to be in focus. So then you want that deeper depth of field. So to get the shallower depth of field, the lower the number, the better. And for the deeper depth of field, the larger the number, the better. So you're gonna set the lens to f16 or f22 in order to get that deeper depth of field. Whereas that shallower depth of field, you want to try and get to 2.8 or 2 or 1.8 or whatever your lens may be capable of. If you have a less expensive lens, like the lens that's on here, this one will only open up to 4 to 5.6 at its widest. And so you're unable to get that very shallow depth of field. A lot of things will be in focus. Okay, so what I've done is I have put the 100 millimeter macro lens on the SL1, and this lens opens up to f2.8, and if you can see in the image here, right now I have, just for this illustration, for these purposes, I have 2 chairs set up, and the shutter speed is set at 1/30th of a second, and the f-stop is set at 2.8, and ISO is set to auto. And the reason why I chose auto in this case is so that it tries to brighten up the image as I change the settings on the camera. Okay, so if you can see in this image, the chair on the left is closer to us, and it is currently in focus, whereas the chair on the right and in the background, there's just the other room that we can peek into, that is out of focus. Now, if I change the f-stop, and I'm not changing any of the focus, I'm just changing f-stop only. If I change the f-stop, this is 3.2, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.6, 6.3, 7.1, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 16, and I think even at f14, that chair, the second chair, is now in focus. Oops. And then if we go even more, f18, f20, and f22, you're starting to see that toolbox in the background get into focus as well. So we can kind of just go back and reverse. 20, f18, f16, f14, f13, f11, f10, f9, and you can see that chair starting to get out of focus, the one on the right. 7.1, 6.3, 5.6, 5, 4.5, 4, 3.5, 3.2, and 2.8. And you can see now only the chair on the left is in focus and not the chair on the right. Now, one thing that I want to recommend is that you memorize these f-stop values, the full ones. So the full f-stop values are 1, 1.4, 2, 2.8, 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16, 22, and 32. And if you'll look, you can see a pattern here. So if you look at it, if we just say 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32, those were all doubled as I went, right? And then same thing, if we shift over one, it's 1.4, 2.8, 5.6, 11, I mean, close enough, right? And then 22. So it's all these doubling. So if you kind of can just remember 1 and 1.4, And if you know a little bit of simple math, you can kind of figure out the rest until you get them all kind of memorized and down. And the reason why I recommend memorizing them all is that you can then very easily, when you're setting exposure, you can very easily know where and how to make changes rather than kind of guessing. Like you can know, like, all right, if I lower this by one stop, if I lower the f-stops by one stop, then I can increase the shutter speed by one stop, or I can I can decrease maybe the ISO by one stop. And as we get further into this, I will you'll begin to understand why this will be important. So just kind of take my word for it. If you can memorize it, awesome. That'd be great. And again, if you have any questions, let us know in the comments, and we'll try and help you guys out.